When Olivia Bennett spent her last $150 on a condemned trailer in the forgotten outskirts of Pinecrest County, she had no idea the secret compartment beneath the kitchen floorboards contained classified government documents that would expose a decades-old military cover-up, transform her struggling rural community into the center of a national security investigation, and ultimately secure her family's future while bringing long-overdue justice to hundreds of forgotten veterans. Before we continue this incredible journey, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story touches your heart, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's video reveals how one small decision can change thousands of lives. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. At 36, the former legal secretary had never imagined she'd be counting out change for ramen noodles and calculating which utility would be most forgiving if the payment arrived 2 weeks late. Life rarely follows the plans we make for ourselves, especially when corporate downsizing eliminates your position of 12 years and leaves your 9-year-old daughter with undiagnosed learning disabilities that the underfunded local school can't properly address. Olivia Bennett stood before the most dilapidated trailer in Whispering Pines mobile home park, clutching an envelope containing $150 in worn bills and coins, her last hope wrapped in paper thin as her remaining options. The November wind cut through her threadbare coat, carrying the scent of coming snow and desperation in equal measure. "Mom, is this really it?" Lily's voice carried from their rusted sedan, where she waited with her tattered backpack of schoolbooks, and the single stuffed rabbit she refused to part with, even as they sold everything else in yard sales to stay afloat these last 4 months. Olivia forced optimism into her voice that she was far from feeling. "It just needs some love, sweetheart. You'll see." The trailer, a 1970s Skyline single-wide that had weathered more storms than Olivia had lived through, listed dangerously. To one side, its metal skirting torn away in places to reveal cinder blocks crumbling under the weight of neglect. 2 windows were boarded up with splintering plywood, and what remained of the steps leading to the front door had collapsed into tetanus-promising jagged metal. But it had a roof, 4 walls, and most importantly, according to Marvin Geller, the park's owner, it would cost only $150 plus monthly lot rent of $185, an amount Olivia could just barely cover with her unemployment benefits while she searched for work. The morning had begun with Olivia's now familiar ritual, checking their joint account balance, $172.43, reviewing the collection notices, electric, medical, credit card, student loans, and counting out Lily's ADHD medication with the precision of someone who knew each small pill represented hours of focused learning her daughter desperately needed. The final eviction notice had arrived yesterday, slipped under the door of their apartment with 72 hours, stamped in violent red across the top. 3 days to find a miracle or join the growing population of car dwellers that Olivia had been pretending not to notice, increasing around their once stable community. $150 cash, like we agreed, Olivia said, extending the envelope to Marvin, a perpetually sunburnt man whose eyes had the distant look of someone who had seen too many desperate people pass through his gates. He studied her with a gaze that assessed without judging, the neutral observation of a man who had long ago stopped believing he could change the inevitable tide of economic forces that washed people up on his shores. Whispering Pines wasn't anyone's first choice of address. It existed in that liminal space between last resort and rock bottom, a collection of aging metal boxes housing society's economically wounded. Retired factory workers surviving on inadequate pensions, disabled veterans navigating labyrinthine benefit systems, single parents like Olivia who had fallen through America's increasingly threadbare safety net, and now, according to the park's residents, more than a few people whose presence went officially unregistered on any lease or mailbox. As is means as is, Marvin reminded her, tucking the envelope into his worn flannel shirt pocket without counting. No refunds, no complaints. Last tenant left in a hurry 8 months back. Haven't been inside since. His eyes shifted away. From hers, a subtle tell that made Olivia's legal secretary instincts prickle with warning. What happened to them? She asked, unwilling to hand over her last dollars without understanding what had driven the previous resident away. Housing this cheap always came with stories, and stories meant potential problems she should know about before committing. Marvin shuffled uncomfortably, mud from the recent rains caking his work boots. Curtis Landry, ex-military, Desert Storm vet, kept to himself mostly. Started claiming he was being watched, said they were coming for what he'd found. He paused, the lines around his eyes deepening. Found him packing his truck at 2 in the morning, talking about heading to Alaska where they couldn't track him. Left most of his stuff behind. And nobody checked on him after. Family. Friends. Olivia pressed, the caretaker in her momentarily overriding her desperate need for shelter. Didn't have neither that I know of, Marvin replied with a shrug that carried the weight of too many similar stories. VA tried reaching him a few times, mail still piling up inside. He handed her a single key attached to a faded plastic fob shaped like the state of Nevada. Trailer's number 13. Ironic, I know. Previous owner died, bank foreclosed, county seized for taxes, then surplused it to me. Nobody's been able to rent it since. People around here are superstitious. Olivia took the key, its weight in, her palm feeling disproportionately heavy given its small size. Thank you, Mr. Geller. Marvin, he corrected, then hesitated. Listen, that little girl of yours. He jerked his chin toward the car where Lily sat watching them through. Foggy windows. Trailers not in great shape, might be mold, wiring's questionable. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I know, Olivia replied quietly. I'll figure it out. As Marvin's pickup truck rumbled, away through muddy puddles that reflected the grey November sky in broken pieces, Olivia stood alone in the biting wind, staring at what was now her property. The paralegal training that had supported her family for over a decade kicked in, and she found herself mentally cataloguing the legal requirements for habitability: working heat, functional plumbing, structural integrity, safe electrical systems. From her preliminary assessment, trailer number 13 met precisely none of these criteria, but the law provided little comfort when necessity overrode all other considerations. With 72 hours until they would be forcibly removed from their apartment and temperatures predicted to drop below freezing by the weekend, theoretical rights crumbled under the weight of immediate needs. A substandard roof still offered more protection than no roof at all. Olivia had researched obsessively before this decision, a habit ingrained from years of preparing legal briefs. Whispering Pines sat in a regulatory grey area, just outside city limits, but not quite under county jurisdiction due to a zoning anomaly that had never been corrected. The land had once belonged to the military, part of a now decommissioned base that had operated from 1952 through 1992. The government had sold parcels to private owners throughout the 1990s, and Marvin had acquired this section for pennies on the dollar during the 2008 financial crisis. Fort Henderson had once housed thousands of personnel focused on what official records vaguely described as specialized communications research, but locals spoke of more secretive operations. Some claimed it had been a listening post for Soviet communications during the Cold War. Others insisted it had hosted classified weapons testing. The lack of concrete information had spawned countless conspiracy theories that Olivia had dismissed as small-town mythology designed to add intrigue to an otherwise unremarkable military installation. "Mom?" Lily called out, her voice carrying worry she was too young to have already learned to hide. "Is everything okay?" "Coming, sweetie," Olivia called back, but she paused at the trailer's warped aluminum door. Something about this moment felt significant, beyond the obvious desperation. Perhaps it was maternal instinct, or perhaps the vague disquiet that follows decisions made without viable alternatives, but she sensed she was crossing more than just a physical threshold. The door protested with a metallic groan that sent a startled crow flapping from its perch on a nearby dead tree. Inside, the smell hit her first, musty abandonment mixed with the chemical undertone of old cigarettes, and something else she couldn't quite identify. Something medicinal and sharp beneath the expected odors of neglect. Her phone's flashlight revealed a surprisingly spacious main room, though spacious was relative to her expectations of cramped quarters. A kitchenette occupied one end with ancient appliances in harvest gold, while a small living area stretched toward what appeared to be a narrow hallway leading to presumably two small bedrooms. The windows, those that weren't boarded over, were covered with aluminum foil taped directly to the glass, a common enough tactic for keeping heat in and prying eyes out, but executed with a meticulousness that struck Olivia as excessive. The floor was littered with the debris of hastily abandoned life, weathered magazines with covers featuring military equipment, empty canned food containers collected in a cardboard box, a nightstand drawer emptied onto stained carpet, and what appeared to be stacks of notebooks filled with cramped handwriting that Olivia couldn't make out in the dim light, but it was shelter. And after receiving the eviction notice, spending 2 nights researching increasingly unaffordable housing options while Lily slept, and watching her daughter try to maintain her characteristic optimism while wearing the same clothes 3 days. Running because everything else was already packed, shelter was enough, more than enough. "We'll clean it up," Olivia whispered to herself, the phrase an echo of her grandmother's perpetual response to life's messes, both literal and figurative. "We'll make it a home." She spent the next 20 minutes conducting a preliminary inspection, making mental notes of immediate safety concerns. The electricity appeared to be functioning, though several outlets showed scorch marks she didn't trust. The plumbing released a torrent of rust-colored water before clearing to something approximately transparent, if not quite what she'd call clean. The roof, miraculously, seemed intact with no obvious leaks, despite water stains on several walls, indicating past problems. The heating unit groaned to life with concerning mechanical protests, but produced warm air when she tested the thermostat. "Baby steps," she murmured, returning to the car where Lily waited with admirable patience, her tablet balanced on her knees as she worked through the educational games Olivia had downloaded to supplement her struggling school performance. Even in crisis, education remained non-negotiable. The tablet, purchased during better times and now irreplaceable, was Lily's primary learning tool, her window to educational resources her school couldn't provide for her specific needs. "Ready for the grand tour?" Olivia asked with forced cheer, opening the passenger door and extending her hand with a theatrical flourish. Lily's eyes, amber-flecked and serious beyond their 9 years, studied her mother's face with the unnerving perception she'd developed since her father's abrupt departure 3 years earlier. At some point during the collapse of their family unit, Lily had become an expert in adult micro-expressions, developing an unsettling ability to detect false enthusiasm and well-intentioned lies. "It's going to be okay, Mom," she said with a solemnity that made Olivia's heart clench. "We're together." Olivia swallowed against the sudden tightness in her throat. When had her baby girl become the one offering reassurance? She helped Lily navigate the treacherous path to the trailer's door, making mental notes to address the missing steps immediately. Physical safety hazards took priority over cosmetic concerns. "Welcome home," Olivia said as they crossed the threshold together, mother and daughter framed in the doorway of their last-chance sanctuary. Lily's nose wrinkled involuntarily at the stale air, but she made no comment, her eyes instead widening as she took in the relative spaciousness compared to the studio apartment they'd shared for the past year. "Is that my room?" she asked, pointing toward the narrow hallway, her voice lifting with cautious hope. "Yes, you get your very own room again," Olivia confirmed, feeling a weight lift at the small joy she could provide amid so many necessities she couldn't. "Want to see it?" An hour later, after settling Lily in the car with snacks, water, and her tablet, "Just a little longer, sweetheart. I need to make sure everything's safe." Olivia began the overwhelming task of basic cleaning. She started in what would become Lily's bedroom, the smaller of two narrow sleeping spaces, but importantly, one with an intact window that would provide natural light for her daughter, who struggled with the flickering fluorescence at school. The room had clearly belonged to a man with military precision. Despite the apparent haste of his departure, the space retained evidence of rigorous organization. A bed frame with no mattress but squared perfectly against the wall, a desk whose surface had been wiped clean but whose drawers still contained rulers and pens arranged by size, a closet with empty hangers spaced at identical intervals. As Olivia pulled stained carpet away from the walls to assess what lay beneath, she noticed something odd. The previous tenant, Curtis, Marvin had called him, had lined the interior walls with what appeared to be aluminum foil, just as he had done with the windows. But unlike the windows, here the foil was sandwiched between the wall and multiple layers of cardboard secured with duct tape. The entire room had been effectively turned into what Olivia recognized, with growing unease, as a makeshift Faraday cage, a structure designed to block electromagnetic signals. Her paralegal experience with a tech company lawsuit regarding corporate espionage had exposed her to the concept of signal blocking. But finding such extensive shielding in an abandoned trailer raised questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered about Curtis Landry's mental state. Beneath the carpet, the floor was standard trailer construction, particle board over a plywood subfloor, showing water damage in corners but otherwise structurally sound. As she worked to remove the worst sections of stained carpet, her attention was drawn to the previous tenant's notebooks scattered throughout the trailer. Curiosity, or perhaps cautious diligence, made her flip one open. July 14th. Interference stronger today. Their increasing signal strength. Standard shielding ineffective. Implementing secondary countermeasures must protect the evidence. August 3rd. Surveillance confirmed. Black sedan parked at entrance to park for 6 hours. Different vehicle, same occupants as July 28th sighting. They're rotating vehicles but not personnel. Amateur mistake. August 17th. Found signal device in air conditioning unit. Removed and destroyed. They're getting bolder. Time running short. Need secure extraction plan for materials. Olivia shivered, setting the notebook aside. Curtis Landry had clearly been paranoid, possibly suffering from untreated post-traumatic stress or other mental health issues common among veterans. His writings displayed the classic hallmarks of persecutory delusions: invisible surveillance, mysterious they figures, technical focus on blocking signals and detecting supposed monitoring devices. She returned to removing the carpet, using a utility knife to cut it into manageable sections near a suspiciously stained area. The blade suddenly slipped through the flooring with unexpected ease, revealing a section that had been deliberately cut and then replaced. Under normal circumstances, Olivia would have assumed water damage had weakened the particle board. But the precision of the cut line and the fact that it formed a near-perfect rectangle approximately 2 feet by 3 feet gave her pause. Probably. Water damage, she muttered unconvincingly, testing the edges of the section with her fingers. Unlike truly rotted flooring that would crumble at pressure, this piece moved slightly as a unit, suggesting it had been intentionally modified. She worked her fingers around the perimeter until she found a small notch that allowed her to lift the section entirely. Her breath caught as her flashlight beam illuminated not the expected darkness of the trailer's undercarriage, but what appeared to be a carefully constructed compartment. The space had been created by removing the insulation between floor and underside and reinforcing the edges with metal brackets. Unlike the haphazard modifications conspiracy theorists might cobble together, this hidden storage space showed evidence of professional construction, precise cuts, proper reinforcement, even a moisture barrier lining the interior. Olivia's paralegal instincts shifted into high gear. This wasn't the work of a mentally unstable veteran constructing physical manifestations of his delusions. This was methodical, purposeful construction requiring skills, tools, and forethought, the kind of hidden compartment that people built when they had something significant to conceal. "Lily!" Olivia called out, her voice steadier than she expected, given the sudden pounding of her heart. "I need you to stay in the car a little longer, okay?" "Okay, Mom," came the slightly disappointed reply through the open window. "Did you find something?" Olivia hesitated, unwilling to lie, but equally unwilling to involve her daughter in whatever this might be. "I'm not sure yet, sweetie. Just give me a few more minutes." Her mind raced through possibilities. Drugs seemed the most likely explanation. The trailer park's isolation and the compartment's construction would make it ideal for storage. But that didn't align with Curtis Landry's military background and apparent paranoia about government surveillance rather than law enforcement. Weapons were another possibility, though the compartment seemed unnecessarily sophisticated for something that many in this rural area stored openly. She debated calling someone, the police perhaps, or even Marvin, but the practical reality of their situation stayed her hand. If this discovery resulted in the trailer being declared uninhabitable or part of a criminal investigation, she and Lily would have nowhere to go. 72 hours until eviction left no margin for legal caution or civic responsibility. Her duty to provide shelter for her daughter had to outweigh other considerations, at least until she understood what she was dealing with. With a deep breath, Olivia reached into the compartment, half expecting to encounter something illegal or dangerous. Instead, her hands met cool metal, a case of some kind, roughly the size of a large dictionary. She carefully extracted it, noting its surprising weight and the absence of dust despite its hidden location. Unlike the rest of the trailer, this item had been protected from the elements and recently handled. The case was aluminum, its edges precision-machined with no manufacturer markings or serial numbers. A combination lock mechanism secured the lid, but someone, presumably Curtis, had left it unlocked. Olivia hesitated, her legal training screaming cautions about chain of evidence and potential criminal liability, but a stronger instinct, the same one that had guided her through her divorce and subsequent financial freefall, urged her forward. Knowledge, however troubling, was preferable to ignorant vulnerability. She opened the case. Inside, secured in custom foam cutouts, lay several items that immediately struck her as incongruous. A stack of manila folders with faded red stripes across their covers, a small notebook bound in what appeared to be high-quality leather, a USB drive encased in what looked like military-grade protective housing, and most puzzling, a collection of film negatives stored in archival sleeves. Each folder bore a stamp she recognized from her legal work with government contractors. Classified, Level 3, eyes only, followed by alphanumeric codes she didn't understand. Olivia's hands trembled as she carefully lifted the top folder. Despite years handling sensitive corporate documents, she'd never encountered actual classified government materials. Opening these could potentially constitute a federal offense, but the surreal juxtaposition of high-level classified documents hidden in a $150 trailer she'd purchased out of desperation created a sense of detachment from normal legal considerations. The folder contained what appeared to be medical records, but unlike any she'd seen before, each page bore official Department of Defense letterhead dated between 1982 and 1987, with Project Heliotrope watermarked across each sheet. The documents detailed something called atmospheric exposure protocols and contained charts tracking subject responses through clinical terminology that made little sense to her. Neurological mapping post-exposure, cognitive degradation timelines, memory suppression efficacy ratings. Names had been redacted with thick black marker, but service numbers remained visible alongside medical data. One page contained a photograph paper-clipped to test results. A young soldier, perhaps 20 years old, his vacant expression chilling. Despite the decades separating his image from her discovery, the second folder contained what appeared to be internal memos regarding something called the Henderson Protocols, with references to exposure groups, control groups, and concerning phrases like acceptable casualty thresholds and neurological impairment expectations. Most disturbing were statistical projections for something labeled delayed onset manifestation, with timelines extending decades beyond the testing dates. Olivia's phone chimed with a text from Lily asking how much longer she would be, a grounding reminder of reality beyond this unnerving discovery. She carefully returned the documents to their case, securing it under a section of carpet she hadn't yet removed. Her mind spun with implications she wasn't prepared to process. Whatever Curtis Landry had hidden here, it clearly connected to Fort Henderson's operations and suggested something far more troubling than routine military communications research. Her paralegal experience provided enough context to recognize what these might be: documentation of some type of human testing, program conducted on military personnel, possibly without proper consent, and subsequently classified to prevent public disclosure. The kind of documentation that government agencies would indeed go to great lengths to recover, lending credence to Curtis Landry's paranoia about surveillance and pursuit. "Coming, sweetie," she texted back, her fingers feeling numb and disconnected from her body. The weight of her discovery pressed against her consciousness, demanding attention she couldn't currently afford to give. First shelter, first safety, first Lily. The mysterious case and its troubling contents would have to wait. Back outside, Olivia found Lily had rolled down the car window despite the cold, her expression caught between curiosity and concern. "Mom, you've been gone forever and you're all dusty. What did you find?" Olivia looked at her daughter, her brilliant, struggling, resilient daughter who'd already weathered more instability than any child should face, and made a split-second decision to offer a version of truth she could handle. "I found some interesting old papers from when this place used to be part of the military base," she said carefully. "The man who lived here before might have worked there." Lily's eyes widened with the instantaneous enthusiasm only a 9-year-old could muster. "Like spy stuff? Secret missions?" Olivia managed a smile that felt foreign on her tense face. "Maybe something like that. But first, let's get you inside where it's warmer. I've cleared enough space for us to set up our sleeping bags tonight." As she helped Lily navigate the precarious entrance, supporting her daughter's slight weight, as she balanced on the single intact step, Olivia's mind was already outlining next steps with the precision her legal training demanded. She needed to understand what she'd found, determine its significance, and assess potential risk. She needed resources beyond her current reach, legal counsel possibly, or someone with military background who could contextualize these documents. But most immediately, she needed to secure their new home and create stability for Lily. The documents had remained hidden for months since Curtis Landry's abrupt departure. They could remain concealed a few days longer while she addressed their basic needs. Inside, despite the musty air and questionable aesthetics, Lily's mood brightened as she explored the space, already claiming the small bedroom as her domain, and planning where her few remaining possessions would go. Children's resilience remained a perpetual wonder to Olivia. How quickly they could adapt to new circumstances, finding excitement in what adults recognized as dire necessity. "Can I help clean?" Lily asked, already pulling off her coat and rolling up her sleeves with determined energy. "Absolutely," Olivia agreed, grateful for both the practical assistance and the opportunity to normalize their situation through shared work. "Let's start by getting these windows uncovered so we can have some natural light." As they carefully removed the aluminum foil from windows, Lily characterizing it as removing the alien protection shields, in a narrative that transformed their circumstances into adventure, Olivia found herself studying her daughter with new perspective. What would it mean for Lily if the documents hidden beneath the floor proved significant? What would it mean for their safety if Curtis Landry's paranoia had been justified? That night, after creating a reasonably habitable sleeping area in the main room and sharing a simple dinner of peanut butter sandwiches and apple slices, celebrated as a picnic on their sleeping bags, Olivia sat beside her sleeping daughter and allowed herself to fully contemplate what lay beneath their new home. The precise, technical language of the documents suggested legitimate government material rather than the ravings of a disturbed mind. The leather notebook remained unexplored, as did the USB drive and film negatives. If her initial assessment was correct, these materials documented unethical testing on service members, potentially including exposure to harmful substances with long-term health effects. The document's classification suggested a cover-up rather than acknowledged research. If Curtis Landry had been stationed at Fort Henderson during the documented time period, he might have been among those exposed. His paranoia might have stemmed not from mental illness, but from actual experience and knowledge. His flight might have been rational response rather than delusional behavior. By purchasing this trailer, Olivia had unknowingly stepped into a situation with profound implications, legal, ethical, and potentially dangerous. As a former legal professional, she understood the seriousness of possessing classified government documents. As a mother, she recognized the potential threat to her daughter's safety if Curtis had been correct about surveillance and pursuit. As Lily's steady breathing filled the quiet trailer, Olivia made a decision. Tomorrow, she would continue establishing their home. She would address immediate safety concerns, begin clearing debris, and create a functioning living space. She would contact the school about transferring Lily's records and research local resources for her daughter's learning needs. But tomorrow night, after Lily was asleep, she would examine the remaining contents of the case. She would document everything methodically, creating insurance against potential threats. Knowledge had always been her strength and shield. In this bizarre situation, where her last $150 had purchased not just shelter, but apparent evidence of government misconduct, knowledge might be their only protection. Olivia gazed at her sleeping daughter, fierce love mixing with newborn fear. They had come to Whispering Pines, seeking only basic shelter, a temporary haven while she rebuilt their lives. Instead, they had stumbled into something much larger and potentially dangerous. The universe had a peculiar sense of irony, sending her to the one place that might either destroy what remained of their security or provide leverage to restore what they had lost. Outside, November wind rattled the loose skirting of their trailer, and somewhere in the distance, a vehicle's headlights briefly illuminated their window before passing by. Olivia found herself checking that the curtains were fully closed, a small behavior adaptation born of new awareness. Curtis Landry's paranoia was proving contagious, seeping into her consciousness like the damp chill through the trailer's thin walls. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, new decisions. Tonight, in a trailer purchased with her last dollars, Olivia Bennett kept watch over her daughter and contemplated the strange twist of fate that had delivered them to this particular place at this particular moment. The classified case beneath. Their floor held secrets that had already altered one man's life dramatically. Now it remained to be seen how those same secrets would transform their own. The night deepened around Whispering Pines trailer park, stars emerging in the clear November sky above their metal roof. In trailer number 13, a single mother who had sought only basic shelter now guarded both her sleeping child and government. Documents never meant for civilian eyes. Her last $150 had purchased far more than a derelict trailer. It had bought entrance into a mystery decades in the making, a potential threat to their safety, and possibly, though she dared not yet hope, a means of securing their precarious future. As exhaustion finally claimed her, Olivia's last conscious thought was that Curtis Landry had fled north to escape what he'd found, while she had nowhere left to run. Whatever consequences these documents might bring, she and Lily would face them here, in their last resort home at the edge of a forgotten military installation, where the past refused to remain properly buried. The next morning arrived with a crystalline brightness that seemed almost mocking after the revelations of the previous day. Sunlight streamed through the windows Olivia and Lily had freed from their foil coverings, casting geometric patterns across the worn flooring and illuminating dust motes that danced in the quiet air. For a disorienting moment, Olivia struggled to remember where they were, the unfamiliar angles and shadows of trailer number 13, momentarily foreign until reality rushed back with sobering clarity. Lily slept peacefully beside her, curled into her sleeping bag with the absolute abandon only children can achieve. Her stuffed rabbit clutched protectively beneath her chin. Looking at her daughter's untroubled face, Olivia felt the familiar surge of fierce determination that had carried them through the past 3 years of mounting hardships. Whatever secrets lay beneath their floor, whatever potential dangers they represented, she would navigate them, as she had everything else, with intelligence, caution, and an unwavering commitment to her daughter's well-being. First things first, she whispered to herself, carefully extracting from her sleeping bag without waking Lily. The practical requirements of their situation hadn't changed with her discovery. They needed functioning plumbing, safe electricity, proper heating and basic cleanliness before she could tackle the moral and legal quandaries presented by classified government documents. By 9 o'clock, Olivia had cleared enough debris from the kitchenette to establish a functional breakfast area. She'd found cleaning supplies in a small storage closet, likely left by Curtis Landry, whose methodical nature extended even to his collection of household chemicals, all arranged by purpose, size, and presumably toxicity. The man might have been paranoid, but his organizational skills were undeniable. "Mom?" Lily's sleepy voice came from their makeshift bedroom. "Are we really living here now?" Olivia turned to find her daughter standing in the doorway. Hair tousled from sleep, oversized t-shirt hanging to her knees. The morning light revealed details of their new home that darkness had mercifully concealed. Water stains tracing yellow patterns across the ceiling, linoleum peeling away from countertops, the faint outline of what appeared to be bullet holes, patched over in one wall, but it also illuminated possibilities, the surprising spaciousness compared to their studio apartment, windows offering light from 3 directions, built-in storage cleverly incorporated into the trailer's design. "We are?" Olivia confirmed, infusing her voice with confidence she didn't entirely feel. "And we're going to make it amazing. Look what I found." She gestured toward a small folding table she'd discovered, collapsed behind the refrigerator, and cleaned to acceptable standards. Our very own breakfast nook. Lily's eyes brightened, as they always did, when presented with a concrete project or goal. Can I help decorate it? We could use the contact paper from my school box. Brilliant idea, Olivia agreed, marveling at her daughter's ability to find enthusiasm in such modest improvements. But first, breakfast. I've got our camp stove working. As they shared instant oatmeal sweetened with the last of their honey, a meal Olivia presented as mountaineer's breakfast to elevate its meager reality, she mentally outlined the day ahead. She needed to transfer the rest of their belongings from the sedan, establish sleeping quarters more substantial than sleeping bags on the floor, assess and address critical safety issues, and begin the process of transferring Lily's school enrollment. The classified documents would have to wait until nightfall when Lily was asleep. I was thinking, Lily said, between careful spoonfuls, her brow furrowed in concentration. The man who lived here before, the one who thought spies were after him. Olivia tensed, surprised by her daughter's reference to Curtis Landry. She'd mentioned him only briefly the night before, careful to frame the previous tenant's departure in terms a child could process without fear. What about him, sweetie? Well, what if he wasn't crazy? Lily's amber eyes met Olivia's with unsettling directness. What if he really did find something important? Like in those spy movies where the government does bad stuff and tries to hide it? A chill that had nothing to do with the trailer's inadequate heating system ran through Olivia. Children's intuition, so often dismissed by adults, frequently cut straight to truths that grown minds rationalized away. That's an interesting thought, she said carefully. Why are you thinking about that? Lily shrugged with the casual acceptance of the young who hadn't yet learned to distrust their own perceptions. I found more notebooks under the bathroom sink when I was looking for toilet paper. They talked about experiments and soldiers getting sick. It seemed like real spy stuff, not crazy person writing. Olivia's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. You read the notebooks? When? This morning, when you were cleaning. I woke up earlier than you thought. Lily continued eating, apparently, untroubled by the discovery that had kept her mother awake most of the night. They were hard to read. The handwriting was super small and squished together, but some parts were really clear. He wrote about atmospheric testing making people sick years later. That's why he thought they were watching him, because he had proof. The casual revelation from her daughter's lips struck Olivia like a physical blow. If Curtis Landry had left additional documentation throughout the trailer, their situation was potentially more complicated and dangerous than she'd initially assessed. More concerning was her daughter's apparent understanding of the situation, a comprehension that couldn't be undone or protected against. Lily, she began, setting down her spoon and choosing her words with practiced parental precision. I need you to show me these notebooks, and I need you to promise me something important. Her daughter nodded solemnly, recognizing her mother's serious tone. What promise? If you find anything else like those notebooks, or anything that seems strange or official-looking, I need you to bring it straight to me without reading it. Some types of information can be dangerous just to know about. She held her daughter's gaze, trying to convey the seriousness without triggering fear. Can you promise me that? Like in Harry Potter with the restricted books that scream when you open them? Lily asked, her frame of reference firmly grounded in her limited literary world. Something like that, Olivia agreed, relieved to have an analogy her daughter could grasp. Some information is restricted for a reason. I promise, Lily agreed easily, untroubled by the gravity that weighed on her mother. But, Mom, if the notebooks are real, does that mean the government really did make soldiers sick? And they're trying to hide it? The question hung between them in the morning light, a child's straightforward moral calculation cutting through layers of potential complexity. Olivia considered deflecting, protecting her daughter from realities most adults struggled to reconcile, but something in Lily's direct gaze demanded honesty. Sometimes, she said carefully, people in power make bad decisions, and sometimes, when those decisions hurt others, they try to hide the evidence instead of making it right. If, and this is a big if, the notebooks contain real information about something like that, it would be very important, but also potentially dangerous to the people who have that information. Like us now, Lily concluded, with the unsettling clarity that periodically emerged from her learning-disabled mind, reminding Olivia that cognitive processing difficulties didn't equate to lack of intelligence. Like us now, Olivia confirmed, uncertain whether she was making the right parental choice, but unwilling to construct elaborate falsehoods her perceptive daughter would inevitably see through. Which is why we need to be very careful and very smart about what we do next. Lily nodded, seemingly satisfied with this framework for understanding their situation. So we're like the good guys in a movie who find out the secret and have to decide what to do with it. Something like that, Olivia agreed, managing a smile despite the knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. Now how about you show me those notebooks, and then we can start making this place feel more like home. The notebooks Lily had discovered, 3 water-stained composition books wedged behind the bathroom vanity, contained additional writings from Curtis Landry, but in a significantly different tone than his paranoid surveillance journals. These appeared to be methodical research notes, documenting his efforts to connect his own deteriorating health conditions with his military service at Fort Henderson. He'd compiled lists of fellow service members who had developed rare cancers, neurological conditions, and autoimmune disorders, many dying prematurely. He'd mapped their service locations, assignments, and proximity to something called sight, who'd with scientific precision. Most significantly, these notebooks contained what appeared to be smuggled copies of his own medical records, showing diagnoses of rare brain lesions consistent with radiation exposure, despite his official military records indicating no such exposure risk in his service history. His notes meticulously documented the discrepancy alongside similar contradictions in other veterans' files. "This is what a cover-up looks like," one entry stated with chilling clarity. "They're destroying evidence of exposure, altering medical records, and waiting for us to die quietly of natural causes before anyone connects the patterns." Olivia closed the final notebook, her legal mind already cataloguing the potential implications. If legitimate, these documents suggested coordinated effort to conceal evidence of military personnel exposure to harmful testing, potentially radiation or chemical, and subsequent denial of appropriate medical care and benefits to affected veterans. The classified documents beneath the floor might provide official confirmation of what Curtis Landry had pieced together through years of determined investigation. "Are we in trouble?" Lily asked, watching her mother's face with characteristic perception. "No, sweetie," Olivia assured her, setting aside the notebooks, "but we might have found something very important that could help a lot of people who are sick." She tousled her daughter's hair gently. "Now let's focus on making our new home comfortable, okay? I saw some interesting decorating supplies in that storage closet." They spent the morning transforming the trailer's interior, working with the limited resources at hand, but finding unexpected satisfaction in small improvements. They scrubbed walls, repurposed Curtis Landry's abandoned furnishings, and created a surprisingly cozy bedroom for Lily, using mismatched sheets as curtains and contact paper to cover water-stained surfaces. Olivia made mental notes of necessary repairs, while maintaining an outward confidence she hoped would normalize their circumstances for her daughter. Around noon, as they were taking a break for lunch on their newly cleared front steps, a rumbling pickup truck pulled into the vacant lot beside their trailer. Olivia tensed immediately, Curtis Landry's paranoia having infected her perception before recognizing Marvin Geller behind the wheel. "Morning," he called, climbing down from the cab with a stiffness that spoke of old injuries. "Thought you might need some supplies." He gestured toward the truck bed, which contained an assortment of building materials, plywood sheets, 2x4s, a screen door in surprisingly good condition. "That's unexpectedly kind," Olivia said, unable to keep surprise from her voice as she approached the vehicle. Marvin shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with gratitude. "Trailer's been empty long enough. Good to see someone fixing it up." He nodded toward Lily, who observed from the steps. "Found these too. Thought the little one might like them." He handed Olivia a cardboard box containing children's books, their covers worn but intact. "Books!" Lily exclaimed, her academic struggles having done nothing to diminish her love of stories. "Can I see, Mom, please?" As Lily eagerly examined the literary treasures, Marvin lowered his voice. "Found anything unusual in there yet?" The question immediately raised Olivia's defenses. "Unusual how?" she asked carefully, studying his weathered face for signs of hidden agenda. "Curtis wasn't just any veteran," Marvin said, glancing around as though checking for observers. "He worked in records at Henderson, had access to files most never saw. Started getting sick about 5 years back. Headaches, tremors, memory problems. VA kept telling him it was PTSD, stress, aging. He didn't buy it." "Why are you telling me this?" Olivia asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Because Curtis was my wife's cousin," Marvin replied quietly, "and he wasn't crazy. Whatever he was hiding in that trailer got him killed." Olivia felt her blood run cold. "Killed? You said he left for Alaska." "That's the official story," Marvin confirmed. "Truth is, they found his truck up near the Canadian border. Empty. No trace of him. Week after he disappeared, men in suits came asking questions. Said they were from the VA, checking on his benefits. Didn't look like any VA employees I ever met." The implications settled around Olivia like a shroud. If Curtis Landry had been eliminated for possessing the evidence, now hidden beneath her floor, she and Lily faced dangers far beyond financial insecurity or substandard housing. "Why sell me the trailer?" she asked, the question emerging more accusatory than intended. Marvin's gaze shifted to Lily, who sat absorbed in her new books. "Because you've got a kid who needs a home. Because Curtis would have wanted his work to matter." His voice dropped further. "And because if what he found is still in there, it needs to get to the right people." "And who would those be?" Olivia challenged, protective instincts flaring. "Not the government," Marvin said firmly. "Curtis trusted a journalist, woman named Rebecca Chen, works for the National Observer. Investigates military cover-ups, corporate corruption. He was supposed to meet her the day he disappeared." Olivia processed this new information, weighing it against her limited options. Curtis Landry's notebooks had established his methodical nature and seemingly rational investigation. The classified documents appeared legitimate. Marvin's information about Curtis's disappearance added concerning context that couldn't be ignored. "I need to think," she said finally. Marvin nodded, apparently expecting this response. "Take your time, but not too much." Curtis waited too long. He reached into his jacket and extended a business card. "Rebecca's contact information. If you find something that needs to get out, she's your best shot at protection." He glanced toward Lily again. "For both of you." After Marvin left, Olivia stood in the thin November sunshine, the journalist's card burning in her pocket like a live coal. The day stretched before her, more cleaning, more organizing, more attempts at normalizing their desperate circumstances. But her mind remained fixed on the hidden case and its potentially lethal contents. "Mom?" Lily called from the steps. "These books are awesome. And look, this one has maps and secret codes in it." Olivia turned to find her daughter holding up a dog-eared copy of Harriet the Spy, her face alight with discovery. The sight released something tight in Olivia's chest. Whatever dangers Curtis Landry's documents presented, whatever moral and legal complexities they introduced to her already complicated life, her primary responsibility remained unchanged. Protect Lily, provide stability, create a future worth inhabiting. That was one of my favorites when I was your age, she said, climbing the makeshift steps to join her daughter. Why don't you read me some while I work on fixing these stairs? The day progressed with the peculiar duality that would come to characterize their time in Trailer 13, ordinary domestic activities overlaid with the constant awareness of extraordinary circumstances. They arranged their meager belongings, constructed a functional desk for Lily's schoolwork using crates and a salvaged board, and made lists of essential repairs prioritized by urgency and budget limitations. Olivia registered Lily for the local school, explaining their situation to an administrator whose practiced sympathy suggested she'd heard many similar stories in this economically devastated region. Through it all, the classified case remained secure beneath the floor, its contents temporarily overshadowed by immediate needs but never fully forgotten. Curtis Landry's methodical notebooks, now hidden in Olivia's duffel bag, offered tantalizing context, but raised as many questions as they answered. Rebecca Chen's business card sat in Olivia's wallet, a potential lifeline or liability, depending on factors she couldn't yet evaluate. As evening approached, bringing with it a bone-deep chill that exposed the trailer's inadequate insulation, Olivia constructed a nest of blankets in what was now definitively Lily's bedroom. The day's physical labor had exhausted her daughter, whose learning differences often manifested in heightened fatigue after periods of intense focus and adaptation. "Will you tell me a story?" Lily asked, as Olivia tucked the blankets around. Her small form, the ritual unchanged despite their dramatically altered circumstances. "Of course," Olivia agreed, settling beside the makeshift bed. "What kind?" "A true one," Lily decided after consideration. "About someone who found something important and had to decide what to do with it." The request, so eerily aligned with their situation, momentarily stalled Olivia's narrative capabilities. Then, drawing on her paralegal background, she began crafting a story from legal history. "Once there was a woman named Karen Silkwood," she began, adapting the complex whistleblower case for her daughter's understanding. "She worked at a factory that made special materials for nuclear power plants, very dangerous materials that could make people sick if they weren't handled properly." "Like radiation?" Lily asked, her vocabulary surprisingly advanced in certain areas. "Exactly like radiation," Olivia confirmed. Karen noticed that the factory wasn't following safety rules. Workers were getting exposed to dangerous materials, and the company was falsifying safety reports to hide it. "That's really bad," Lily observed, her moral compass unfailingly direct. "It was," Olivia agreed. Karen started collecting evidence, documents, photographs, testimony from other workers. She was going to share it with a newspaper reporter who could tell everyone what was happening. "Did she?" Lily asked, eyes wide with engagement despite her fatigue. Olivia hesitated, conscious of balancing truth with age-appropriate content. She tried, but on her way to meet the reporter, she had a car accident. She died, and the documents she was carrying disappeared. Lily frowned. "That doesn't sound like an accident." "Many people agree with you," Olivia said carefully. "But even though Karen didn't get to share her evidence, her story became famous. Investigators started looking at the factory more carefully. Laws were changed to better protect workers. Karen's courage made a difference, even though she paid a terrible price." "That's sad," Lily said after a moment's consideration, "but also kind of brave, right? She tried to help people even though it was dangerous. Very brave, Olivia agreed, smoothing her daughter's hair. Sometimes ordinary people are the only ones who can expose important truths. But they have to be smart about how they do it. Lily nodded, eyelids growing heavy. If you found something important, you'd be smart about it. You're the smartest mom ever. I try to be, Olivia whispered, continuing to stroke her daughter's hair until her breathing deepened into sleep. Once certain Lily was soundly asleep, Olivia returned to the living area, pulling Curtis Landry's notebooks from her duffel bag and spreading them across the folding table alongside a legal pad she'd found in the trailer. If she was going to make informed decisions about the classified documents, she needed to understand as much context as possible. For the next 2 hours, she meticulously cross-referenced information from Landry's research notebooks with what she recalled from the classified folders, creating timeline charts and noting key names that appeared in multiple sources. The pattern that emerged confirmed her initial suspicions. Fort Henderson had apparently conducted some form of atmospheric or environmental testing using military personnel as unwitting subjects. The tests, according to Landry's research, exposed service members to either radiation or chemical agents with long-term health effects that typically manifested 10 to 25 years after exposure. Most concerning were Landry's documented attempts to secure proper medical treatment and veterans' benefits for himself and others affected. His notes detailed systematic denial of claims, alteration of medical records, and coordinated efforts to discredit those who raised questions. The parallels to historical cases of military negligence and cover-ups, Agent Orange, Camp Lejeune water contamination, Gulf War syndrome, were unmistakable to anyone with legal background in veterans affairs. Around midnight, Olivia finally retrieved the aluminum case from beneath the floor, her decision to examine its contents again, overriding lingering legal and safety concerns. The leather notebook she'd noted during her initial discovery proved to be a research journal belonging to a scientist identified only as Dr. K.W., dated 1982-1987. Unlike the classified folders with their clinical detachment, this journal conveyed increasing moral discomfort with Project Heliotrope's methodology and outcomes. Subject Group C experiencing significant cognitive decline at 36 months post-exposure, one entry noted. Recommend immediate medical intervention and program suspension pending review. Request denied by Military Oversight Committee. Ethical boundaries being systemically ignored. Later entries documented the scientists' growing alarm. Longitudinal projections suggest delayed neurological effects will begin manifesting within 10-15 years, continuing for decades. Conservative casualty estimates 30 to 45% of exposed personnel. This is no longer research. This is knowing endangerment of U.S. service members. The final entry, dated March 1987, was particularly chilling. Program officially decommissioned. Today, all research materials ordered destroyed. Personnel reassigned or terminated. Official record will show routine communications research only. God help me for my part in this. God help them for what's coming. The USB drive, when Olivia cautiously connected it to her laptop, contained hundreds of digitized documents, internal memos, medical records, exposure data, personnel lists. Most significantly, it included photographic evidence of the testing, facilities and medical imaging showing characteristic brain lesions in affected service members. Curtis Landry had apparently spent years methodically collecting and organizing evidence, creating an irrefutable case connecting military testing to specific health outcomes in veterans. The film negatives, which she couldn't properly examine, without equipment to view them, were labeled with dates and location codes corresponding to references in the journal. Olivia surmised they likely contained visual evidence of the testing procedures or facilities, potentially the most damning evidence of intentional exposure. By 2 a.m., Olivia had compiled enough information to understand the basic contours of what appeared to be a significant military cover-up. Approximately 2,000 service members unknowingly exposed to hazardous testing between 1982 and 1987. Systematic denial of resulting health claims, deliberate falsification of records, and coordinated suppression of evidence. If legitimate, and everything she'd examined suggested it was, these documents could provide hundreds of veterans with evidence to secure long-denied medical care and benefits. They could also expose government officials who had authorized both the original testing and subsequent cover-up. The moral imperative seemed clear. This information needed to reach those affected and enter the public record. The practical complications, however, were equally evident. Possessing classified documents was a federal offense, regardless of their content or the legitimacy of their classification. Whistleblower protections were notoriously unreliable, particularly in cases involving national security. Additionally, if Curtis Landry's fate was indeed connected to these materials, anyone possessing them faced potential physical danger. Olivia carefully returned everything to the case and secured it beneath the floor, her mind racing with competing considerations. Her legal training offered perspective on potential approaches, established journalistic outlets with history of handling classified materials, whistleblower advocacy organizations, attorneys specializing in military justice. Rebecca Chen represented one possible avenue, but Olivia wasn't prepared to trust Marvin's recommendation without further verification. She finally crawled into her sleeping bag around 3 a.m., exhaustion temporarily overpowering anxiety. Her last conscious thought was that the universe had a twisted sense of humor, sending a desperate single mother seeking minimal shelter directly into the center of a decades-old military scandal and cover-up. Her $150 trailer had come with unanticipated accessories, moral responsibility for explosive information, potential legal jeopardy, and conceivable physical danger. Yet as she drifted towards sleep, another perspective emerged through the fog of fatigue. If properly handled, these documents represented something beyond risk. They offered potential leverage, purpose, and, ironically, security. In a world where economic forces had rendered her increasingly powerless to protect her daughter's future, fate had delivered information that carried distinct value and significance. The challenge now was determining how to transform dangerous knowledge into tangible improvement in their circumstances, without enhancing the existing threats to their well-being. Tomorrow would require practical actions, continuing to establish their new home, beginning Lily's educational transition, securing employment opportunities. But beneath these ordinary concerns now ran an extraordinary undercurrent of responsibility. Somewhere in the balance between protecting her daughter and serving larger justice lay the correct path forward, a path Olivia would need to discern, while navigating the immediate challenges of their precarious new beginning. Outside Trailer 13, the night deepened over whispering pines. Security lights cast pale illumination across the collection of metal homes, housing varied forms of economic vulnerability and quiet desperation. Within one particular trailer, purchased with the last financial resources of a determined mother, classified evidence of military malfeasance lay hidden beneath unremarkable flooring, waiting for decisions that would determine not only the future of its current possessors, but potentially thousands of veterans systematically denied accountability and care. Olivia Bennett slept at last, her breathing synchronizing with her daughter's in the quiet darkness. Tomorrow waited with its dual realities. Ordinary domestic challenges overlaid with extraordinary moral complexity. Her last $150 had purchased not merely shelter, but unwitting entrance into a decades-old conspiracy where truth carried both liberating potential and lethal risk. The documents beneath their floor represented both danger and opportunity, threat and leverage, past injustice and possible future redemption. Like all true turning points, this one offered no certainty beyond the guarantee of transformation. Whatever path Olivia chose in the coming days would irrevocably alter their trajectory. For better or worse, remained to be determined. What was certain, however, was that Trailer 13 was no longer merely their last resort home. It had become the unlikely epicenter of decisions with implications far beyond its thin metal walls. By the third day in Trailer 13, Olivia had established surprisingly functional living arrangements given their circumstances. The kitchenette now operated with passable efficiency, the bathroom had been scrubbed to acceptable standards, and Lily's bedroom featured cheerful touches that belied the trailer's dilapidated exterior. Using materials Marvin had provided, Olivia had reinforced the rickety steps and patched the most concerning holes in the flooring. They were far from comfortable, but they had crossed the essential threshold from desperate to merely struggling. Progress. Olivia refused to undervalue. "You're really good at fixing things," Lily observed that morning, watching her mother replace a faulty electrical outlet with a new one purchased from the hardware store in town. Like MacGyver, but with actual tools. Olivia smiled, tightening the last screw on the outlet cover. "Your grandfather taught me. He always said knowing how to fix what's broken was more important than having money to replace it." The memory of her father, a maintenance supervisor who had raised her with practical skills alongside college aspirations, brought both comfort and renewed determination. He would have approached their current situation with the same methodical problem-solving she was attempting to model for Lily. "Smart like you," Lily noted, handing Olivia the electrical tape without being asked. "Mom, I start school tomorrow. What if the other kids make fun of where we live?" The question cut through Olivia's concentration, reminding her that despite Lily's resilience, their circumstances carried social implications her daughter couldn't fully process. "People who judge others based on their homes or possessions aren't worth worrying about," she said, setting down her screwdriver to meet her daughter's concerned gaze. "True friends care about who you are, not what you have." Lily considered this with characteristic seriousness. "But what do I tell them when they ask where I live?" "The truth," Olivia replied after a moment's reflection. "That you live in a home your mom is fixing up, that it's different from your old apartment but has some advantages, like your own bedroom and more space." She touched her daughter's cheek, gently. "And that home isn't about the building, it's about the people inside it." Lily nodded, apparently satisfied with this framing. "Can I tell them about the secret spy stuff?" Olivia's heart skipped a beat. "Absolutely not," she said more sharply than intended, then softened her tone. "Remember our agreement about the notebooks? That information is like Harry Potter's restricted books, potentially dangerous. We don't discuss it with anyone. Understand?" "Because the government might come looking for it?" Lily asked with unsettling perceptiveness. "Like they did with the other man?" The innocent question highlighted how thoroughly their extraordinary circumstances had infiltrated even Lily's understanding of their situation. "Because private information stays private," Olivia clarified, unwilling to confirm scenarios that might unnecessarily frighten her daughter. "Now, how about helping me organize your school supplies for tomorrow?" As they sorted through Lily's limited educational materials, Olivia's mind remained fixed on the mounting complexity of their situation. 3 days of methodical research, during Lily's sleeping hours, had convinced her of several critical facts. The documents appeared thoroughly legitimate. They documented serious misconduct by military and government officials, They potentially offered life-changing evidence for hundreds of affected veterans, and their possession placed Olivia and Lily in legitimate danger from multiple directions. She had verified Rebecca Chen's credentials as an investigative journalist, with several high-profile exposés to her name, including work on military testing programs and veterans' issues. Chen had built a reputation for protecting sources while publishing impactful investigations that withstood legal challenges. If Curtis Landry had indeed been arranging to share his evidence with Chen before his disappearance, his judgment appeared sound. Equally concerning, Olivia had discovered 3 recent obituaries for veterans mentioned in Landry's notebooks, men who had served at Fort Henderson during the documented testing period and subsequently developed the characteristic neurological conditions. Each had died within the past year, their deaths attributed to natural causes despite their relatively young ages. The pattern supported Landry's assessment of both delayed health effects and ongoing efforts to prevent accountability. Most immediately pressing was the practical recognition that her unemployment benefits would barely cover their basic living expenses, leaving nothing for the substantial repairs the trailer required or Lily's educational needs. Without stable income, their tenuous shelter would remain vulnerable regardless of what she decided about the classified documents. A knock at their door interrupted these thoughts. Olivia tensed immediately. The hypervigilance she'd previously dismissed as paranoia now firmly embedded in her own psychological responses. "Stay here," she instructed Lily quietly, moving cautiously toward the door. Through the small window, she recognized Marvin's weathered profile with relief. "Just Mr. Geller," she told Lily, unlocking the 3 separate locks she'd installed on their door, another adaptation she couldn't have imagined necessary a week earlier. "Morning," Marvin greeted, his demeanor suggesting more than a casual visit. "Got someone who wants to meet you." He gestured toward his truck, where a woman in her 50s sat in the passenger seat, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Evelyn Landry, Curtis's sister. Olivia's pulse quickened. Why does she want to meet me? Because Curtis told her if anything happened to him, whoever ended up with this trailer might need her help. Marvin's expression remained neutral, but his meaning was clear. She's good people, retired Army nurse, knows most of what Curtis was working on. The potential value of connecting with someone who understood the context of the documents warred with Olivia's protective instincts. "Give me a minute," she said, closing the door to consult with Lily. After establishing clear boundaries, Lily would remain inside working on her school materials while Olivia spoke with the visitors outside. She reopened the door with cautious agreement. Evelyn Landry proved to be a straight-backed woman with military posture and evaluating eyes that missed nothing as she approached the trailer. "Miss Bennett," she acknowledged with a nod, "I appreciate you agreeing to speak with me. I imagine you've had an eventful few days." "You could say that," Olivia replied non-committally. "What exactly did your brother tell you about this trailer?" That he'd hidden evidence here that could help hundreds of veterans if it reached the right people," Evelyn answered without pretense. "And that if he disappeared, whoever found it would likely need medical and legal protection." The blunt assessment confirmed Olivia's worst fears, while simultaneously offering potential alliance with someone who understood the situation. "And you believe he disappeared because of that evidence?" "I know he did," Evelyn stated flatly. "Curtis called me the night before he left, said he'd arranged to meet a journalist who could publish everything safely. Next day, his truck is found abandoned at the Canadian border, and men claiming to be from various agencies started questioning everyone who knew him." Her jaw tightened. Curtis served his country for 22 years. His reward was terminal. Brain lesions and being hunted like a criminal for trying to expose what they did to him and thousands of others. Olivia studied the woman carefully, assessing sincerity and potential risk. Evelyn Landry's military background made her either a valuable ally or a particularly dangerous adversary. "Why should I trust you?" she asked directly. "You shouldn't," Evelyn replied without hesitation. "Trust is luxury right now. What you need is practical support." She extended a business card different from Rebecca Chen's. "I work at Veterans Memorial Hospital in the neurology department. We've been tracking unusual clusters of brain lesions in veterans for years, particularly those who served at specific installations, including Henderson. Whatever you've found, I can help connect it to medical evidence." Olivia took the card, noting the hospital logo and Evelyn's credentials. "And what do you expect in return?" "More justice for my brother and hundreds like him," Evelyn answered simply. "Medical care for veterans being gaslit about conditions directly connected to their service. Accountability for officials who authorized experimentation on unwitting service members." The straightforward response aligned with everything Olivia had learned from the documents and Landry's notebooks. "I haven't confirmed I've found anything," she noted carefully. "You wouldn't be installing 3 new locks on a $150 trailer if you hadn't," Evelyn observed, with the directness of someone accustomed to triage assessments. "Listen, I'm not asking you to show me anything or tell me anything today. I'm simply offering resources when you're ready." She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small device resembling a key fob. "Signal detector, military grade. Curtis had several. This one's clean, bought through private channels with cash." Olivia accepted the device with uncertain hands. "You think they're already monitoring us?" "I think Curtis's evidence threatened people in positions of significant power," Evelyn replied. "People who've successfully buried this testing program for decades. Whether they're monitoring this trailer depends on whether they believe Curtis removed everything before he disappeared." The assessment raised uncomfortable questions about their safety that Olivia had been avoiding confronting directly. "How? Would I even use this? Green light means no active surveillance signals detected within 100-foot radius. Yellow indicates possible monitoring, but uncertain source. Red means active surveillance, multiple signals." Evelyn demonstrated the single-button operation. "Check it randomly, never on a schedule, especially before discussing anything sensitive." Marvin, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally spoke. "Evelyn's got resources that could help you both. Medical, legal, security. Things Curtis arranged before." He trailed off, unwilling to verbalize his cousin's likely fate. "I need time to think," Olivia said, pocketing the device alongside Rebecca Chen's card. 2 potential lifelines with uncertain reliability. "Understandable." Evelyn handed her a prepaid phone. "When you're ready to talk, use this. One time. Use, then discard it. My number's programmed in." She held Olivia's gaze with military directness. "Whatever you decide, be careful. Curtis believed in what he was doing enough to risk everything. That kind of evidence matters." After they departed, Olivia returned inside to find Lily arranging her school supplies with meticulous care, each pencil and notebook placed with precise intention, her daughter's method of creating order within circumstances beyond her control. "Was that lady the soldier's sister?" Lily asked, without looking up from her organization project. "Yes," Olivia confirmed, unsurprised by her daughter's attentiveness to conversations she couldn't have overheard. "She was checking to make sure. We're settling in okay." Lily nodded, accepting this partial truth. She looked sad, and kind of angry too, like when you're trying not to cry so you look mad instead. The perceptive observation struck Olivia forcefully. "That's exactly right," she acknowledged. She's sad about her brother and angry about what happened to him. "Is she going to help us with the secret stuff?" Lily asked, finally looking up from her careful arrangements. Olivia considered various responses before settling on simplified honesty. Maybe. I'm still deciding who can help us best. You'll figure it out, Lily stated with absolute confidence. You always do. The simple faith humbled Olivia even as it strengthened her resolve. However she proceeded with the classified evidence, her decisions must ultimately serve her daughter's well-being, both immediate safety and long-term future. Curtis Landry had pursued justice without family obligations constraining his choices. Her circumstances demanded more nuanced calculations. That evening, after settling Lily to sleep with another carefully selected true story about corporate whistleblowers who had protected public health, Olivia activated the signal detector. Its steady green light provided momentary reassurance that at least their immediate conversations weren't being monitored. Whether that safety would persist remained an open question. She spread the classified documents across their small kitchen table, reviewing them with fresh perspective after meeting Evelyn Landry. The medical records now carried additional weight, each clinical notation representing a real person potentially suffering without proper diagnosis or treatment. The experimental protocols, with their cold calculations of acceptable casualty thresholds, transformed from abstract historical misconduct to present-day human suffering. Olivia was carefully photographing key documents when headlights swept across their window, immediately triggering the hypervigilance that had become her constant companion. She hurriedly gathered the materials, returning them to their hiding place beneath the floor before approaching the window with caution. A black SUV with government plates had parked near the trailer park entrance, a sight incongruous enough to accelerate her pulse. Two men in suits emerged, speaking briefly with Marvin, who had apparently been locking the main gate. The detector in her pocket remained green, but Olivia took no chances, retrieving Lily's sleeping form and relocating her to the small closet she had prepared with sleeping bags and emergency supplies, another adaptation born of her evolving caution. She watched through barely parted curtains as the men conducted what appeared to be a routine canvass of the trailer park, stopping at several residents' homes before finally approaching Trailer 13. Their knock, when it came, carried the measured authority of official business rather than threatening intent. Olivia activated the signal detector once more, confirming its steady green light before approaching the door with carefully constructed normalcy. "Can I help you?" she asked through the chained opening. "Miss Bennett, I'm Special Agent Wilson. This is Special Agent Carmichael, Veterans Affairs Office of Inspector General." Both displayed credentials that appeared legitimate based on Olivia's legal experience. "We're conducting routine follow-up regarding a former resident of this property, Curtis Landry, understanding you've recently moved in." The phrasing, neither question nor statement, required acknowledgement without revealing whether they already possessed this information. "That's right," Olivia confirmed cautiously. "Purchased it a few days ago." Mr. Landry was receiving VA benefits that require verification of his current status, Agent Wilson explained, with practiced neutrality. "We understand he departed suddenly. Did you happen to find any personal effects, mail, or documentation belonging to him?" The deliberate casualness of the inquiry masked its significance. Olivia drew on years of paralegal experience, constructing her response with equal care. "The trailer was pretty cleaned out when I arrived. Found some old magazines, junk mail, nothing personal or important." Agent Carmichael nodded, his expression revealing nothing. "And no one's attempted to contact you regarding Mr. Landry or his belongings? Former associates, family members?" "No, nothing like that," Olivia lied smoothly, her legal training in deposition preparation serving her well. "Is there a problem with Mr. Landry?" "Standard administrative procedure when benefit recipients relocate without updating their information," Agent Wilson replied. "If you do encounter any of his personal effects or are contacted by anyone claiming to represent him, we'd appreciate a call." He extended a business card with the official VA OIG contact information. "Of course," Olivia agreed, accepting the card. "Is there anything else?" "Not at this time." The agents exchanged glances with subtle professional communication. "Thank you for your assistance, Ms. Bennett. Have a good evening." Olivia maintained her composed demeanor until their vehicle departed, then immediately retrieved Lily from the closet, her heart pounding with implications she couldn't ignore. The timing of the agent's visit, mere hours after Evelyn Landry's appearance, suggested either routine coincidence or concerning surveillance. Neither possibility offered comfort. "Were those the bad guys?" Lily asked sleepily as Olivia returned her to bed. "No, sweetie, just people asking questions about the man who lived here before," Olivia assured her, though her own certainty was far less absolute. "Everything's fine. Go back to sleep." After confirming Lily had returned to sleep, Olivia used the prepaid phone to send a text to the program number. "VA agents just visited, asking about CL. Coincidence?" Evelyn's response came minutes later. "Not coincidence. They track everyone connected to his case. Be careful what you discard." They checked trash. The warning sent a new wave of paranoia through Olivia. She'd been disposing of Curtis Landry's less significant materials, outdated magazines, empty prescription bottles, in their regular trash. The thought that government agents might be examining such mundane discards for clues elevated the situation. From theoretical risk to concrete surveillance, a second text arrived. "Need to move faster than planned. Can meet journalist tomorrow if you're ready." The accelerated timeline triggered Olivia's caution. Why the rush? "Agent visit means they've flagged the trailer again. Window of opportunity closing." Olivia weighed the competing risks, moving too quickly without adequate preparation versus waiting until surveillance potentially increased. "Need guarantees of safety for my daughter." "Understood. Chen has secure location for meeting, can arrange childcare with trusted person." The suggestion of separating from Lily, even temporarily, violated Olivia's core protective instincts. "No. Daughter stays with me." There was a longer pause before Evelyn's response. "Respect that. Alternative, meeting at Children's Museum tomorrow 2 p.m. Public location, security cameras, multiple exits. Chen will bring lawyer specialized in whistleblower protection." The proposed location demonstrated thoughtful consideration of their circumstances, a public venue where a mother and daughter wouldn't attract attention, with built-in security that would deter aggressive intervention. "We'll consider. Need to check something first." Olivia spent the next hour conducting careful research on her laptop, verifying Rebecca Chen's recent articles and confirming the existence and reputation of the lawyer mentioned in Evelyn's text. Both appeared legitimate. Chen had published a major exposé on corporate pollution affecting veterans' health just months earlier, and the attorney specialized in representing military whistleblowers with several significant cases to his credit. By midnight, weighing the accumulating evidence against diminishing options, Olivia made her decision. "Tomorrow 2 p.m. We'll bring copies only, not originals." Evelyn's final text conveyed approval. "Smart. Chen wears red scarf. Lawyer has bow tie. I'll be nearby but separate. Trust your instincts." After disposing of the prepaid phone as instructed, Olivia spent the remaining hours before dawn preparing. She selected the most damning documents, those directly connecting Project Heliotrope to veteran health outcomes and demonstrating intentional cover-up, and created digital copies on a new USB drive purchased with cash. She then concealed the original materials in a new location, separate from the main cache beneath the floor, creating redundancy against potential discovery. As sunrise approached, she finally allowed herself a few hours of fitful sleep. Her dreams filled with faceless agents in dark suits and Curtis Landry's desperate flight toward a Canadian border he would never cross. Morning brought Lily's first day at her new school, a milestone that would have dominated Olivia's concerns under normal circumstances, but now competed with life-or-death calculations regarding classified documents and government surveillance. She maintained outward calm as she prepared Lily's lunch and laid out her best remaining clothes, determined that her daughter's education would not become collateral damage in their increasingly complicated situation. "You're going to do great today," Olivia assured Lily as they walked toward the bus stop, the signal detector showing green in her pocket. "Remember what we practiced about meeting new people. Find something to compliment or ask about," Lily recited. "People like talking about themselves and their interests." She squeezed Olivia's hand nervously. "Will you be here when I get home?" The question carried weight beyond typical first-day anxiety. Olivia knelt to meet her daughter's eyes. "I promise I will always be here for you. No matter what happens, we stay together." Lily studied her mother's face with that uncanny perceptiveness. "Because of the papers, the ones from the soldier." "Because you're my daughter, and nothing is more important than that," Olivia answered truthfully. "The papers are just papers. You are my whole world." As the school bus departed with Lily, waving anxiously from the window, Olivia felt the weight of competing responsibilities pressing against her chest. She had mere hours to prepare for a meeting that could potentially secure justice for hundreds of veterans, while simultaneously placing her and Lily in the crosshairs of powerful interests determined to maintain secrecy. She spent the morning carefully selecting which documents to share with the journalist, creating a representative sample that demonstrated the testing program's existence, its harmful effects, and the subsequent cover-up without revealing all their evidence. Strategic partial disclosure seemed the wisest approach, providing enough for publication while maintaining additional leverage against potential retaliation. At 1:30, she arrived at the Children's Museum, having carefully surveyed the surrounding streets for surveillance. The cheerful building bustled with afternoon activity, parents with young children exploring interactive exhibits designed to make science and history accessible. Olivia purchased admission with cash and positioned herself near the human body exhibit that offered clear sightlines to multiple exits while appearing to simply be an engaged parent. At precisely 2:00, a woman matching Rebecca Chen's press photos entered, the promised red scarf draped casually around her neck. She was accompanied by an older man with a distinctive bow tie and scholarly appearance. They moved naturally through the space, pausing at various exhibits while gradually approaching Olivia's position without obvious intent. "The brain exhibit is particularly fascinating," the man commented as they reached Olivia, his voice pitched for privacy despite the public setting. "How neurons can be permanently altered by environmental factors." The coded acknowledgement confirmed their identities. "My daughter finds it all interesting," Olivia responded carefully, "especially how systems are connected." Rebecca Chen nodded almost imperceptibly. "Children have wonderful curiosity about how things work. I'm Rebecca. This is Arthur. Perhaps we could let the children play while we chat." The natural interaction provided cover for them to move toward a quieter alcove, where several parents sat watching their children explore a water table exhibit. Olivia noted Evelyn Landry positioned near the exit, apparently absorbed in helping a young child, presumably not her own, with an interactive display while maintaining vigilant awareness of their surroundings. "I understand you found something that belonged to Curtis Landry," Arthur said quietly, once they were seated. "I'm here to explain your legal protections before you make any decisions." "What protections?" Olivia asked skeptically. "From What I've read, whistleblowers often end up prosecuted regardless of the public interest. That's why approach matters, Arthur explained. I've represented military whistleblowers for 20 years. The key is controlling the narrative before they can frame you as a criminal. He offered his business card with his full credentials. We establish legal protection by properly documenting your possession of materials, demonstrating you had no intent to harm national security, and creating public awareness that makes silencing you more dangerous than addressing the underlying issues. Rebecca added, I've been investigating Project Heliotrope for 3 years based on veterans' health complaints. Curtis Landry was going to provide the documentary evidence I needed for publication before he disappeared. Without hard evidence, it's just conspiracy theories easily dismissed by officials. And if I provide that evidence, Olivia questioned, what happens to me and my daughter? Immediate legal representation, Arthur stated firmly. Public disclosure of your role as a concerned citizen who discovered evidence of misconduct. Formal whistleblower protection filing, and practical security measures. He lowered his voice further. I maintain relationships with former intelligence community members who provide counterveillance for clients in sensitive positions. Rebecca leaned forward slightly. Most importantly, once the story breaks across multiple outlets simultaneously, the strategic calculus changes. Silencing you becomes counterproductive. It only confirms the cover-up and triggers fail-safe releases of additional evidence. Fail-safe releases? Olivia questioned. Standard procedure in national security journalism, Rebecca confirmed. Evidence is secured with multiple trusted individuals who will release everything if anything happens to the primary sources, makes the cost of silencing witnesses too high. The systematic approach demonstrated professionalism that aligned with Olivia's legal background. These weren't amateurs or conspiracy theorists, but experienced professionals with established protocols for handling precisely this type of situation. I have copies of select documents, Olivia said finally, her voice barely audible above the children's excited chatter. Not everything, but enough to establish the pattern. Arthur nodded approvingly. Smart approach. Partial disclosure maintains leverage. Before I share anything, Olivia continued, I need absolute guarantees regarding my daughter's safety. She's 9 years old and completely innocent in all this. Family protection is my first priority with whistleblower clients, Arthur assured her. We have secure temporary housing available immediately if needed. But often the safest strategy is controlled public exposure with legal representation already in place. He passed her a folder. This is a standard representation agreement. It establishes attorney-client privilege for everything you share with me, even if you ultimately decide not to proceed. As Olivia reviewed the document with her trained and paralegal's eye, Rebecca continued quietly. The veterans affected by this testing program have been fighting for recognition and treatment for decades. Many have died without acknowledgement of what was done to them. The documents Curtis described could finally force accountability and proper medical care for survivors. The humanitarian implications weighed heavily alongside Olivia's personal considerations. Each day of delay potentially meant another veteran denied proper treatment or family denied rightful benefits. Yet her primary responsibility remained to Lily, ensuring that their pursuit of justice didn't create greater danger than the precarious stability they'd established. I need 24 hours, Olivia decided finally, to review these documents, discuss options with my daughter in age-appropriate terms, and make arrangements for potential relocation if necessary. Arthur nodded, understanding. Thoughtful approach. Better decisions come from proper preparation. I'll examine what you're willing to share today, Rebecca suggested, and prepare preliminary reporting while respecting your timeline. Nothing publishes without your final approval. Olivia hesitated momentarily before removing the USB drive from her pocket. This contains copies of key documents establishing the testing program's existence, subsequent health effects, and intentional cover-up. The originals and additional evidence remain secure. Rebecca accepted the drive with evident professional excitement tempered by solemn responsibility. I'll review these immediately in a secure location. We can meet tomorrow same time to discuss next steps based on content verification. As their meeting concluded with carefully casual conversation for potential observers, Evelyn Landry departed separately without acknowledgement. The coordinated movement suggested professional experience, with covert meetings that both reassured and unsettled Olivia. She had entered a world of counterveillance, secure drops, and calculated public appearances, terminology she'd previously encountered only in legal thrillers and espionage films. Yet as she departed the museum to collect Lily from her first day of school, Olivia felt a surprising sense of cautious optimism beneath her perpetual vigilance. For the first time since discovering the classified documents, she had connected with individuals possessing both the expertise and resources to potentially navigate this dangerous territory. Curtis Landry had worked alone until arranging the meeting that likely cost him his life. She now had potential allies with established protocols for protecting whistleblowers and publishing sensitive information. More importantly, she had taken concrete action toward addressing the injustice documented in those faded classified folders. The legal secretary, who had spent years helping wealthy corporations navigate regulatory requirements, was now potentially instrumental in exposing government misconduct that had harmed hundreds of service members. The single mother who had spent her last $150 on desperate shelter had unknowingly purchased leverage against powerful interests who had assumed their secrets safely buried. As Olivia waited at the bus stop, she observed an unmarked sedan passing slowly through the neighborhood, potentially innocent, potentially surveillance. The perpetual uncertainty of potential observation had become her new normal, a hyper-awareness that exhausted even as it potentially protected them. She activated the signal detector in her pocket, noting its reassuring green light with measured relief. The school bus appeared around the corner, carrying her daughter back from her first day in a new environment. Whatever dangers their situation presented, whatever complex moral and legal calculations awaited, Olivia's foundational purpose remained unchanged. Protect Lily, secure their future, create stability from chaos. If the classified documents beneath their trailer floor could potentially serve those purposes while simultaneously delivering long-overdue justice to forgotten veterans, perhaps their discovery represented opportunity rather than merely danger. Lily descended from the bus with cautious optimism visible in her expression, the look of a child who had navigated a challenging new situation with moderate success. "Mom, I made a friend!" she called, running toward Olivia with excitement that momentarily eclipsed their extraordinary circumstances. "Her name's Maya, and she likes science just like me." Olivia embraced her daughter with fierce, protective love. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me everything about your day." As they walked back toward Trailer 13, Lily chattering enthusiastically about her new classroom and teacher, Olivia maintained vigilant awareness of their surroundings while treasuring the momentary normalcy of a mother-daughter conversation about school. Whatever tomorrow might bring, whether further steps toward exposing Project Heliotrope or increased danger from those determined to maintain its secrecy, today offered the simple victory of Lily's successful first day and small steps toward establishing their new life. The classified documents hidden throughout their trailer represented both deadly risk and potential salvation. The agents who had visited represented both legitimate government authority and potentially corrupt power, protecting decades-old crimes. Rebecca, Chen, and Arthur represented both professional allies and unknown quantities, whose reliability remained unproven. In this landscape of uncertain truths and competing risks, only one reality remained absolute: Olivia's determination to protect her daughter while navigating toward justice and stability. Her last $150 had purchased not merely shelter, but unwitting entrance into a moral crucible where personal survival and ethical responsibility collided with devastating impact. How she would ultimately balance these competing demands remained unclear, but the path forward had at least become visible, one careful step at a time, with Lily's well-being as her unwavering compass. As they approached Trailer 13, its metal siding gleaming in the afternoon sun, Olivia felt the weight of Curtis Landry's legacy alongside her own evolving purpose. The desperate single mother seeking basic shelter had been irreversibly transformed into a potential whistleblower, holding documented evidence of government malfeasance. The paralegal, who had once helped corporations navigate regulatory obstacles, was now contemplating exposing systematic abuse of power that had harmed hundreds of veterans. "Home, sweet home," Lily announced, without irony, as they climbed the newly reinforced steps to their front door. The simple declaration highlighted how rapidly humans could adapt to changing circumstances, finding stability even in highly unstable situations, creating home from whatever materials life provided. "That's right," Olivia agreed, unlocking their multiple security measures with practiced efficiency. "Home is wherever we're together." No matter what developments tomorrow might bring, that fundamental truth would guide every decision she made, regarding the classified evidence and its potentially life-altering implications. 1 year after Olivia Bennett spent her last $150 on a condemned trailer, she stood on the newly constructed deck of what was now widely known as Whistleblower House, watching as veterans and their families gathered for the annual Project Heliotrope Memorial. The transformation of Trailer 13 and the surrounding area was as profound as the changes in her own life, a metamorphosis from desperate survival to purposeful advocacy that still occasionally struck her as surreal when she allowed herself moments of reflection. "Mom, Senator Williams just arrived," Lily called from inside their renovated home, excitement evident in her voice. At 10, Lily had developed a surprising passion for politics alongside her scientific interests, following the congressional hearings on military testing programs with the same enthusiasm other children devoted to social media or video games. She brought the new compensation bill draft. "I'll be right there," Olivia responded, taking a final moment to absorb the significance of what they'd accomplished in 12 extraordinary months. Where a dilapidated trailer had once listed precariously on crumbling cinder blocks, a modest but sturdy 3-bedroom home now stood, its foundation poured with volunteer labor from veterans groups, its walls raised in community barn-raising fashion by families of Project Heliotrope survivors, its mortgage covered by a combination of book advance, speaking fees, and the whistleblower reward Olivia had initially refused but ultimately accepted at the insistence of her legal team. The surrounding property, purchased from Marvin Geller at fair market value, had been transformed into a memorial garden and advocacy center where affected veterans could receive guidance on medical claims and legal representation. The day after, her meeting with Rebecca Chen and Arthur Benson at the Children's Museum had unfolded with a momentum that still took Olivia's breath away when she recalled it. Chen's preliminary review of the documents had triggered immediate action: simultaneous publication in 3 major news outlets, formal whistleblower protection filings with the Inspector General and Congressional Oversight Committees, and a carefully orchestrated press conference where Olivia, flanked by Arthur and representatives from veterans organizations, had presented herself not as a criminal possessing classified documents, but as a concerned citizen who had discovered evidence of government misconduct while renovating her modest home. The public narrative had been meticulously crafted to emphasize Olivia's background as a legal professional committed to justice, a single mother struggling with economic hardship, and a responsible citizen who had properly discovered evidence through appropriate journalistic and legal pathways. The story had captured national attention not merely for the explosive revelations about Project Heliotrope, but for the compelling human elements. A desperate mother spending her last dollars on shelter only to discover evidence that would ultimately secure justice for hundreds of forgotten veterans. The documents had proven even more significant than Olivia had initially recognized. Project Heliotrope hadn't merely been an isolated testing program, but part of a systematic pattern of human experimentation conducted across multiple military installations throughout the 1980s, research officially terminated, but whose effects continued to manifest in veterans decades later through characteristic brain lesions, neurological deterioration, and increased cancer rates. Most damning had been the evidence of deliberate falsification of medical records and systematic denial of veterans' health claims, despite internal acknowledgement of causality, a coordinated effort to avoid financial liability that had effectively sentenced hundreds of service members to medical bankruptcy, inadequate treatment, and premature death while protecting the officials responsible for their exposure. "There you are." Rebecca Chen's voice broke through Olivia's reflections as the journalist joined her on the deck. In the past year, their cautious professional relationship had evolved into genuine friendship, forged through shared purpose and mutual respect. "Taking a moment before the chaos begins," Olivia smiled, gesturing toward the gathering crowd. "Remembering what this place looked like when we arrived. Sometimes the contrast is still hard to process." Rebecca nodded, understanding. From condemned trailer to national landmark in 12 months, the universe has a peculiar sense of poetic justice. She studied Olivia with the perceptive gaze that had made her one of the nation's most respected investigative journalists. "Any regrets?" The question deserved honest consideration despite its potential simplicity. The year had brought extraordinary changes, not all positive. There had been death threats requiring temporary relocation, legal challenges from government agencies attempting to reclaim the classified materials, surveillance that had become so routine, Olivia no longer activated the detector except during sensitive conversations. There had been attempts to discredit her testimony through character assassination, intimidation of supporters, and institutional resistance at every level of government. Yet alongside these challenges had come unexpected allies, profound purpose, and tangible impact for hundreds of veterans who now received proper medical treatment and compensation. Most significantly, Lily had flourished, her learning disabilities properly addressed through specialized education her mother could now afford, her natural intelligence nurtured by meaningful involvement in advocacy work that connected academic concepts to real-world applications. "None worth mentioning," Olivia answered finally. "Every difficult moment has been balanced by seeing another veteran receive proper treatment or another family secure benefits they were wrongfully denied. For decades." She gestured toward Lily, now enthusiastically explaining the compensation bill's details to several interested veterans, and watching her grow into someone who understands that ordinary people can create extraordinary change when they choose courage over comfort. That alone would justify everything. "Hardly an ordinary person, her mother," Rebecca countered. With warmth, "The Attorney General just called this morning. They're preparing to announce indictments against 3 former defense officials involved in authorizing the original testing and subsequent cover-up. First criminal charges directly resulting from the heliotrope disclosures." The news represented a significant milestone in accountability that had often seemed unattainable against entrenched power structures. Curtis would have wanted to see that Olivia said quietly, thinking of the man whose meticulous documentation had made all this possible, a man whose body had been discovered 6 months earlier in remote Canadian wilderness, the official cause of death listed as exposure, but whose suspicious timing would forever suggest more sinister circumstances. Rebecca nodded solemnly. Evelyn's coming today. Said she's bringing something Curtis would have wanted you to have. The journalist checked her watch. I should find Senator Williams before her staff creates an impenetrable barrier. She's been remarkably consistent in her support of the compensation bill, but political pressure against it is intensifying as the financial implications become clearer. As Rebecca departed, Olivia took a final moment alone to center herself before engaging with the day's activities. The journey from discovering those first classified documents to today's memorial gathering had transformed not just their physical circumstances, but her fundamental understanding of citizenship, accountability, and individual responsibility. Within systemic injustice, the choice to become a whistleblower, to potentially sacrifice personal safety for collective justice, had never been a single dramatic decision, but rather a series of small, incremental steps guided by both practical necessity and ethical consideration. Each careful disclosure, each strategic alliance, each public statement had been weighed against potential impacts on Lily's well-being, while simultaneously acknowledging the moral obligation created by possessing information that could alleviate others' suffering. Inside their home, now filled with veterans, family members, advocates, and political representatives, Olivia was immediately enveloped in the community that had coalesced around Project Heliotrope disclosures. These gatherings had become quarterly events, part support group, part strategy session, part celebration of incremental victories against institutional resistance. "Miss Bennett," Senator Williams greeted her warmly, extending both hands in the practiced gesture of political sincerity that nonetheless reflected genuine respect. "The amended compensation bill passes committee vote tomorrow. Your testimony last month was instrumental in securing bipartisan support despite Defense Department objections. Thank you for your continued championship of these veterans," Olivia responded, having developed her own diplomatic language for these interactions. "The medical support provisions are particularly critical given the progressive nature of these conditions." The senator nodded, her expression reflecting genuine concern rather than political calculation. "The VA implementation guidance includes expedited processing for confirmed heliotrope cohorts with presumptive eligibility for documented exposure locations. Dr. Winter's diagnostic protocol has been formally adopted as the standard assessment criteria." Evelyn Landry appeared at Olivia's elbow, her military posture unchanged despite the past year's emotional toll. The discovery of her brother's remains had provided closure, but deepened her commitment to securing the accountability he had sacrificed everything to pursue. "Olivia, might I have a moment?" she requested quietly, indicating a need for privacy amidst the crowded gathering. In Olivia's home office, a room that had once been Lily's bedroom in the original trailer before the renovation expanded their living space, Evelyn removed a small package from her bag. Curtis had this in a safety deposit box, with instructions to retrieve it if he disappeared for more than 6 months. It took this long to complete the authorization process to access it. The package, wrapped in simple brown paper, contained a leather-bound journal and sealed envelope addressed to the Finder of Truth in Curtis Landry's distinctive handwriting. Olivia accepted both with reverent hands, recognizing the significance of materials Curtis had considered important enough to secure separately from his main documentation. "Have you read them?" she asked quietly. Evelyn shook her head. The instructions specified they were for whoever brought heliotrope to light. "That's you, not me. I was just the connector." Alone, after Evelyn rejoined the gathering, Olivia carefully opened the envelope, finding a handwritten letter dated just weeks before Curtis's disappearance. To whoever finds my research and chooses truth over silence. If you're reading this, I'm likely gone, either in hiding if I'm fortunate or dead if I'm not. Either way, the mission continues through you now. I spent 15 years documenting what they did to us at Henderson and the other sites, painstakingly connecting health outcomes to exposure protocols they believed would never see daylight. What began as seeking answers for my own deteriorating health became a mission to secure justice for hundreds who died without acknowledgement or proper care. What matters isn't who receives credit for exposing Project Heliotrope, but that the evidence reaches those who can use it to help the living and honor the dead. Whistleblowing isn't about glory or revenge. It's about fulfilling the sacred obligation that power should never operate without accountability, especially when that power is entrusted with the lives of those who serve. The journal contains names of others who helped me, doctors who provided records despite threats, officials who leaked documents at great personal risk, veterans who contributed medical data knowing it might never matter. Protect them if you can. Acknowledge them, if it's safe. Whatever challenges you face for bringing this information forward, know that you continue work many of us began but couldn't complete. In exposing these truths, you honor not just those affected by heliotrope, but all who believe government must serve rather than sacrifice its citizens. History remembers the truth-tellers, even when contemporaries call them traitors. In solidarity and gratitude, Curtis Landry, SFC, Retortes, U.S. Army, 1974-1996. The letter's simple dignity brought tears to Olivia's eyes. This connection across time with a man she'd never met, but whose courage and determination had irrevocably altered her life's trajectory. Curtis had pursued justice without knowing who would ultimately complete his mission, trusting that the evidence he meticulously compiled would eventually reach someone who would recognize its significance and assume the responsibility of bringing it forward. The leather journal contained page after page of names, dates, and connections, a comprehensive network of individuals who had contributed pieces to the heliotrope puzzle from various positions within government, military, and healthcare. Some she recognized from the past year's investigations and congressional hearings. Others remained unknown, having contributed their pieces anonymously through Curtis's careful coordination. Most striking was a section titled "The Price Paid," listing veterans who had died, awaiting acknowledgement of their service-connected conditions, each name accompanied by medical details, service location, and date of death. The final entry, added in different ink, simply stated, "The list continues until accountability replaces denial. Add names until justice is complete." Olivia carefully closed the journal, recognizing both its historical significance and its continued relevance to ongoing advocacy efforts. Curtis's documentation of those who had contributed to uncovering Project Heliotrope provided important context that completed their understanding of how dedicated individuals working separately had ultimately created the comprehensive evidence that led to public disclosure. She returned to the gathering with renewed purpose, the connection to Curtis's original mission strengthening her resolve to continue the work of accountability and justice despite institutional resistance. The assembled community represented the living embodiment of what whistleblowing ultimately served, not abstract principles, but actual lives, impacted by decisions made in classified settings by officials who never expected public scrutiny. "Ms. Bennett," a hesitant voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find a middle-aged man she didn't immediately recognize. "Sorry to intrude. I'm Michael Donovan. My father was stationed at Henderson from 1983 to 1986. He died 3 years ago from what we now know were heliotrope-related brain lesions." Olivia extended her hand, having become accustomed to these introductions from affected families. "I'm very sorry about your father. That's not why I wanted to speak with you," Donovan continued, his expression suggesting significant internal debate before approaching her. "I work at Riverside Military Archives, processing recently declassified materials." He lowered his voice despite the crowded room's ambient noise. 3 days ago, I found documentation suggesting heliotrope wasn't the only program. There was a parallel operation called Sunflower at installations in the Southwest. Different exposure protocols, but similar documentation patterns. The revelation sent a familiar chill through Olivia, the same sensation she'd experienced upon first opening Curtis Landry's hidden case beneath the trailer floor. "Are you saying there's another covered-up testing program with affected veterans?" Donovan nodded, tension evident in his careful posture. "The materials suggest broader testing than anything publicly acknowledged so far. I've secured copies of key documents." He hesitated significantly. "I remembered how you said in your congressional testimony that ordinary people sometimes become reluctant custodians of uncomfortable truths. That resonated with me." The parallel to her own unexpected entry into whistleblowing was unmistakable. Another person accidentally positioned to access critical information, facing the moral calculation of risk versus responsibility. "Have you spoken with anyone else about this?" "Just you," he confirmed. "Thought you might know the right pathways, how to bring this forward without ending up." He trailed off, Curtis Landry's fate hanging unspoken between them. Olivia felt the weight of potential responsibility settling alongside existing commitments. The Project Heliotrope disclosures had created infrastructure for addressing similar revelations: congressional allies, journalistic relationships, legal frameworks for protected disclosures. The question wasn't whether she could help channel this new information through appropriate pathways, but whether she should extend her involvement beyond her original whistleblowing role. Lily appeared beside them, her perceptive attention immediately registering the serious nature of their conversation. "Mom, Dr. Winters is looking for you. She says the medical registry has reached 500 confirmed cases." She studied Donovan with characteristic directness. "Are you one of the veterans?" "No, sweetheart," Olivia answered before Donovan could respond. "Mr. Donovan works with military records. He's helping identify information that might assist other veterans." She made a quick decision, born of experience. "Would you please ask Rebecca to join us in my office in 5 minutes? And let Dr. Winters know I'll speak with her shortly." After Lily departed, Olivia turned back to Donovan. "This conversation requires both privacy and expertise. Rebecca Chen has developed protocols for handling sensitive disclosures that maximize impact while minimizing personal risk." She gestured toward her office. "If you're comfortable, I'd like her perspective on potential approaches." This isn't your responsibility," Donovan said quietly, seemingly recognizing the additional burden his revelation placed on someone already carrying substantial advocacy commitments. "Maybe not," Olivia acknowledged. "But Curtis Landry passed his responsibility to me when circumstances prevented him from completing his mission. If there's another program with more affected veterans, they deserve the same accountability and care we're securing for heliotrope survivors." The meeting with Donovan and Rebecca extended well beyond their planned duration, the preliminary documents suggesting a testing program potentially affecting hundreds of additional veterans across multiple southwestern installations. By the time they emerged, the memorial gathering had transitioned to its more formal phase, with veterans and family members sharing remembrances of those lost to heliotrope-related conditions. Lily had assumed an unexpected role in their absence, confidently guiding participants through the memorial garden, where stones engraved with names created a physical reminder of lives affected by classified decisions made decades earlier. Watching her daughter moving comfortably among people 3 and 4 times her age, offering genuine connection and surprisingly mature insights, Olivia felt renewed certainty that their extraordinary journey had provided benefits that transcended their challenges. "Your daughter's remarkable," Senator Williams commented, joining Olivia as she observed Lily from the deck. "Most children her age are absorbed in social media and passing interests. She discusses policy implications with more insight than many of my colleagues." "Circumstances create capabilities," Olivia replied with measured pride. She's witnessed how ordinary people can create meaningful change when they choose involvement over indifference. That's shaped her understanding of citizenship in ways I couldn't have deliberately taught. The senator nodded thoughtfully. "The VA secretary mentioned your name for the advisory committee on transparency in military health research. It would require monthly meetings in Washington." She studied Olivia carefully. "Would you consider it? Your practical experience bridging between affected veterans and government systems would bring valuable perspective." The invitation represented institutional acknowledgement that had seemed impossible a year earlier when Olivia had been framed as potentially criminal for possessing classified documents. The transformation from suspect to advisor reflected both the legitimacy of the heliotrope disclosures and the effective advocacy that had followed initial revelations. "I'd be honored," Olivia responded after brief consideration, "particularly if the committee's scope might eventually expand beyond heliotrope to address similar programs that may have operated under comparable secrecy." The senator's raised eyebrow acknowledged the strategic positioning in Olivia's acceptance. "You've heard something new. Potential patterns requiring verification," Olivia confirmed without specifics. "The systems established for addressing heliotrope may serve as templates for other situations if they arise." "Your diplomatic language has developed considerably this past year," Williams observed with professional appreciation. "I'll have my office send the formal appointment details next week." As evening approached, the gathering transitioned to its final phase, the candlelight ceremony where each participant illuminated a light representing both remembrance of those lost and continued commitment to those still fighting health battles resulting from their exposure. The ritual had developed organically during the first memorial months earlier, becoming a powerful visual representation of both loss and resilience. Lily joined Olivia for this final ceremony, daughter and mother lighting their candles from Curtis Landry's perpetual flame that burned in a protected lantern at the center of the memorial garden. The symbolism, carrying forward light from someone whose work they continued, reflected their journey from unwitting discoverers to intentional advocates within a community bound by shared purpose. "Do you think there are more people like Curtis?" Lily asked quietly as they held their flames against the gathering dusk. "People who tried to tell the truth but couldn't finish the job alone." The question reflected her daughter's growing awareness of systemic issues beyond their immediate experience, a development that simultaneously filled Olivia with pride and concern. "I think truth rarely emerges in single revelations," she answered carefully. "More often it comes through many people contributing pieces until the picture becomes clear enough that it can't be ignored." Lily nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Beyond her years, like a puzzle where everyone has different pieces and they don't make sense until they're put together." "Exactly like that," Olivia confirmed, impressed by her daughter's analogy. "That's why community matters so much in advocacy work. Individual whistleblowers are vulnerable, but connected networks of truth-tellers create resilience through shared purpose and mutual protection." They stood together in comfortable silence as darkness settled fully across the property that had transformed from desperate last resort to meaningful sanctuary. Around them, hundreds of candles illuminated faces of veterans, family members, medical professionals, journalists, legal advocates, and political representatives. An ecosystem of accountability that had developed from Curtis Landry's isolated documentation through Olivia's catalyzing disclosure to this sustainable community of ongoing advocacy. Later that night, after the guests had departed and Lily had fallen asleep, surrounded by her beloved books and science projects, Olivia sat in their comfortable living room, reflecting on the day's events and unexpected revelations. The potential existence of Project Sunflower presented both opportunity and obligation, chance to secure justice for additional veterans, while potentially reopening personal risk she had hoped was diminishing. On her coffee table lay Curtis Landry's journal alongside Michael Donovan's preliminary documents, physical representations of continuous responsibility rather than completed mission. The pattern seemed clear. Whistleblowing wasn't a singular event, but an ongoing commitment to advancing truth against persistent resistance, each disclosure potentially leading toward others as institutional secrecy rarely contained itself to isolated instances. A text from Rebecca interrupted her contemplation, preliminary verification of Donovan's documents promising. Key sources confirmed Sunflower Operations 1984-1989, estimated 300-plus potential veterans affected. Ready when you are. The message confirmed what Olivia had suspected upon hearing Donovan's initial description. Their work with Project Heliotrope wasn't reaching conclusion, but rather opening pathways toward broader accountability. The systems, relationships, and expertise developed through their year of advocacy positioned them uniquely to help channel this new information toward proper disclosure and resultant justice. She texted back, simply, "Coordination meeting tomorrow. Bring Arthur and Evelyn. We'll establish protected disclosure framework before proceeding." After sending the message, Olivia moved to check on Lily, finding her daughter peacefully asleep beneath the poster they had created together, featuring Marie Curie's famous quote, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood." The simple wisdom had become something of a family motto during their extraordinary year, a reminder that knowledge, however uncomfortable, offered path through fear toward meaningful action. Standing in the doorway watching her daughter's peaceful rest, Olivia reflected on the remarkable journey from desperate mother spending her last $150 on condemned shelter to nationally recognized whistleblower whose actions had secured medical care for hundreds of veterans while establishing accountability mechanisms that would protect future service members from similar abuses. The trailer's hidden compartment had contained more than classified documents. It had concealed potential she could never have anticipated when making that desperate purchase. The discovery had transformed not just their material circumstances, but their fundamental understanding of what ordinary citizens could accomplish when choosing truth over silence, persistence over resignation, and collective action over isolated endurance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges through Project Sunflower, requiring careful navigation of complex legal, political, and security considerations. But tonight offered momentary peace within the home that justice had built, a structure infinitely stronger than the condemned trailer that had preceded it, supported by community foundation rather than crumbling cinder blocks. As Olivia finally prepared for sleep, she placed Curtis Landry's journal in the fireproof safe that protected their most important documents, symbolic acknowledgement that his legacy continued through their ongoing work. The desperate single mother who had once counted coins for ramen noodles now counted lives potentially saved through her unexpected journey into whistleblowing and advocacy. Her last $150 had purchased not merely temporary shelter, but permanent purpose, a transformation, from seeking personal survival to facilitating collective justice. The condemned trailer had contained hidden evidence of institutional betrayal, but also unexpected opportunity for meaningful impact beyond anything she could have imagined in those desperate hours before discovering what lay beneath the kitchen floor. Outside their window, the memorial garden's perpetual flame continued burning in quiet defiance against forgetting, illuminating stones bearing names of those who had died seeking acknowledgement, while simultaneously lighting pathway for those still seeking justice. Inside, Olivia Bennett finally surrendered to sleep, comforted by the knowledge that their work continued with growing support, institutional recognition, and sustainable infrastructure to protect both truth and truth-tellers. The universe indeed had peculiar sense of irony, sending a desperate mother seeking minimal shelter directly into custody of classified evidence that would ultimately build not just secure home for her family, but foundation for justice benefiting hundreds of forgotten veterans. Her $150 trailer had contained unexpected treasure not measured in gold, but in lives improved, systems reformed, and accountability restored where it had been deliberately obscured. Tomorrow would bring new chapters in ongoing advocacy, but tonight offered well-earned rest within walls constructed from transformed circumstances. A home built not just from lumber and nails, but from courage, community, and commitment to completing missions others had begun but couldn't finish alone. Whatever challenges Project Sunflower might present, they would face them not as isolated whistleblowers, but as established advocates within resilient networks of mutual support and shared purpose. As Olivia drifted towards sleep, Curtis Landry's words from his final letter echoed in her consciousness. History remembers the truth-tellers, even when contemporaries call them traitors. The trailer that had once represented desperate last resort had become first chapter in ongoing story of accountability, advocacy, and transformation, personal salvation discovered through commitment to collective justice, security achieved through principled risk, strength found through vulnerability transformed into purpose. The Whistleblower House stood as testament to unexpected beginnings and unanticipated impact. Physical reminder that desperation sometimes delivers opportunity disguised as disaster, that condemned structures occasionally contain foundations for reconstruction, and that ordinary people making incremental choices toward truth can ultimately create extraordinary change no single heroic action could accomplish alone. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.